Probably the most common question I get is, will my camera work for Digiscoping? Hard question to answer. There's so many different makes and so many different models, and they change so often. What is true is it will probably have a 3x or less zoom. And the zoom has to match the eyepiece well. It'll have a quick shutter release and a bright LCD. To find out whether your camera works behind the eyepiece, you need to set up your scope with the eyepiece that you're going to use. It'll probably be the zoom. Then you're going to hold your camera behind the eyepiece. Use 2 fingers to guide it in. And then move it in and out until you see whether you can see the full field in your LCD. That's the goal. You want to be able to see the full field of view of the scope in that LCD. If it has little round corners or big round corners, then we have to consider whether it's the right camera for this scope. This is what it looks like from the back. Again, use 2 fingers to guide the camera zoom. And this is what you're looking for. You see we do have black corners, that's vignetting. But with this camera, just touching the zoom a bit, up to 1.3, 1.5, gets rid of those. And then we have the full rest of the zoom range in order to Digiscope. With some eyepieces, generally fixed power eyepieces, you'll get the full frame image right at the start, at the lowest setting of the zoom. And then you have the full range of the zoom to use for Digiscoping. That's ideal. Don't assume that the zoom on the camera is going to be right down against the glass on the eyepiece. You need the sweet spot, where you get the widest possible field in your LCD, and it could be a little ways back from the eyepiece. Another thing to consider is how fast the camera takes the picture once the shutter release has been pressed. It's important that it take it quickly, otherwise you'll never catch interesting behavior on the part of the bird. One way to test that is what I'm doing here with a stopwatch. As the stopwatch counts up, I'll count with it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Take your picture. This is the picture that we took. You can see that it took almost a second for the picture to actually be taken. If you pre-focus the camera, you can get it down to maybe 1/10 of a second, as we did here in this shot. If you own a camera like this, it's called a bridge camera, or an advanced point and shoot. It has a long zoom, and it's ideal for taking all kinds of pictures, even birds at its longest focal length. But put it behind the eyepiece, and it just doesn't work. It vignettes at all settings. There's no way to get a full frame image with this camera. People also ask about DSLRs. Again, wonderful cameras for general photography, but with the kit zoom that comes with it. Putting it behind the eyepiece, again, you'll find that there's no setting of the zoom that will give you a full frame image. Don't despair though. There are lots of ways to use a DSLR. If you invest in a 50mm or shorter, maybe 45, fixed focal length lens for your camera, you can mount it right behind the eyepiece just as though it were a pocket digital. Focus, swing your camera in, drop it down, look through the viewfinder, and take your picture. There are actually some advantages to this method. For one thing, with some cameras and some lenses, you'll maintain autofocus, and almost all cameras will auto-expose through the spotting scope. Focusing is not a big problem. Using the viewfinder, you can focus normally and then take your picture. Another approach is to use our dedicated DSLR adapter. It replaces the eyepiece. It actually screws on to threads around the eyepiece mount. It has a T2 mount on the end that matches the bayonet mount on your DSLR. Just mount the DSLR and then use the spotting scope as a lens. Disadvantages to this method? You lose autofocus, of course, and with some cameras you also lose auto exposure. So you're on manual, complete, but you can do the job. So there you go. Find a camera that works for you with your scope and the eyepiece you want to use. And get out there and start digiscoping.